Okay, aloha and welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out on this cold, windy day here in Manoa. Today we have with us Sister Barbara Jean Donovan, who is the General Minister of the Sisters of St. Francis of the Neumann Communities. She's here along with Susan Crossett, who is the President and CEO of the PFM, or Partners in Franciscan Ministries, which works with the Sisters of St. Francis, and here at St. Francis School, the whole community together. I know we have about an hour here today, so 3:30 to 4:30, and then there's some teams that are coming in here to practice basketball. So I was told, yeah, we have to wrap up by 4:30. But I want to introduce now Sister Barbara Jean for the prayer and begin with her message to our community here. So please join me in welcoming Sister Barbara Jean Donovan.
Thank you, Dr. Casey Asado. I am really very happy to be here today to see that so many of you have come to join us at this important meeting. And I would like to begin with a prayer of St. Francis. Please join me. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. And where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. As Dr. Asada said, my name is Sister Barbara Jean Donovan, and I am the General Minister of the Sisters of St. Francis of the Neumann Communities. I live in Syracuse, New York, excuse me, where our General Late is, and I am responsible for the overall operations and decisions of our religious community, not only here in Hawaii, but in all the other places where we are. Today, I am really happy that you are here because the decision that I want to announce is a very sad one. And because of that, I feel understanding is very important. And I hope that you will feel free to ask questions and make comments during our time together. I'd like to announce that the St. Francis School will close at the end of this school year in its entirety. In January, the Board of Directors of the school announced the closing of grades 7 through 12 for the next school year. The plan at that time was to keep pre-K through 6 open if the enrollment was sufficient. March 31st was the deadline for making a decision about pre-K through 6. However, based on what we have experienced during that time and the enrollment received so far, it's apparent that the elementary school cannot be viable. And we believe that it is important to make the announcement soon today so that you can do the planning you need to do for the time to come in the next school year. This announcement is very sad for you, very sad for the Board of Directors, very sad for the sisters. The school has been here since 1924, providing quality education in a spirit of joy. It is important that you understand why this decision was made. Unfortunately, the answer is simple. There is just not enough money to continue. While the decision is very difficult to hear, It is really important to know and understand that the Board of Directors of St. Francis School have done everything in their power to look at opportunities to provide financial assistance to the school so that it could continue. That did not happen, not because of their efforts, but just because of circumstances. In past years, the sisters have offered financial support for the school, substantial amount, over $2 million, but are not able to do that any longer. And because of this, the Sisters of St. Francis, who sponsor the school, had to make the very, very difficult decision to close it at the end of this school year. I would like to thank all those who have been a part of the school, particularly the Board of Directors, the faculty and students and parents, the alumni, and all those who have in any way walked through these doors during the last 95 years. I don't want to forget anybody, so I'm relying on this. The true legacy of the school is not in the buildings. It is in the people. It is in the people who have been through those doors in the last number of years. And I know that that legacy will continue on in the years to come. So for the rest of the school year in the coming months, we will be celebrating the history and legacy of St. Francis School together. It will be a time of transition. It will be a time of difficulty. It will be a time of remembering. It will be a time of gladness and joy. That is my hope. My final hope is that in the few minutes that will follow, we are able to answer questions or provide information that will help you to move forward with this decision. Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Sister, why couldn't this have been done earlier in the school year?
The question, why could this not have been done earlier in the school year? The answer is we were living in hope that we wouldn't have to do it. We were looking at all alternatives. The board was working night and day. The sisters and PFM were involved in trying to find ways to say we have sufficient money to continue into the next year and then use that time to look for more substantial finances. It didn't happen, unfortunately. And that was why today I wanted to announce that decision. The plan was to wait until the beginning of April, the end of March. It's too late.
Sister, just a comment. Sister, just a comment. And that's putting you or anybody, if 7 to 12, grade 7 to 12, the partial closure of the school happened, does the board or anyone think that the lower grades would suddenly dwindle, or there would be maybe rumors that that the writing's on the wall? So I mean, I'm not trying to make it very difficult, but that's my comment.
I think the question was if grades 7, the closure of 7 and 12 when they was announced, did that hurt the outcome of all of this? Is that? The answer is probably yes in terms of enrollment, but in terms of finances, the idea behind the closure was to make the financial situation better. it turned out that is not true. That did not work out. Yes.
Thank you, Sister. Just a quick question. Several classes have established endowments, scholarship endowments, and I guess for my class, the question is, what happens to those endowments? Can we redirect them?
Right now, we do not have, the answer is probably yes, but we don't have how to do that at this point in time. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was there were some endowments, and what happens to the endowment money, and can it be redirected?
I'm going to give it to him.
I guess I have a comment and a question. Comment. It sounds like you're in very dire financial straits. So my question is, you're continuing to keep the school open until the end of this year. Do you have enough money to continue the school for the rest of the year so the kids have a quality education? I mean, I don't know.
I will answer that. That's an excellent question, and thanks for asking it. In all the discussions with the board and with our sister leadership team who ultimately made the decision with me, we said we never want the school to close without appropriate planning, celebrations, closing the school year, doing what is best for the students. The Sisters of St. Francis guaranteed the board that we would give them enough money for the closure, for the rest of the school year. So in truth, you don't have to worry about that. There will be sufficient funds to close the school.
Is there any chance that the school would be reopened even partially in the future, or is the plan to sell the buildings and the property?
The question was, is there any plans sometime in the future to reopen the school, or is the plan to sell the property? At this point in time, there is no plan to reopen the school. So eventually, the property will probably be put up for sale. Remember, the property is also the home of the sisters here, who are planning to move probably maybe at the end of December of 19 or maybe into 2020. And they will stay here until that time. In making a decision like this, it prompts, quite frankly, all kinds of questions that don't have answers today. So we're telling you the best that we know now. Casey?
So I have here some live stream questions from people in the communities all over the world for sisters. So I'll read some questions for you
Sure.
From the community. One person writes, who is responsible for the financial problems at St. Francis School?
Who is responsible for the financial problems? It's a difficult question to answer. I will tell you pieces of it. St. Francis School is one of the lowest tuition schools in Hawaii. The tuition charged so that those who cannot afford high tuition were able to get quality Catholic education. The tuition was intentionally kept low. In addition to that, scholarships were given, tuition assistance, to help many people who could not afford it to attend school here. The unfortunate part of that, that's a good part, the unfortunate part of that is that it costs more to run the school than the tuition paid for. And that was the situation. That was another good question. Casey?
There's a couple of other questions. One is, what will happen to the Neumann Center and the adult daycare center on campus?
We are in conversation with the Diocese of Honolulu. The sisters own the land. The diocese owns those buildings. So we are in negotiations, we're talking to them actually, to say, do they want to keep those, don't they want to keep them, how do they want to keep them, and how we can work that out. So it's a future question of what will happen to the Neumann Center and the Dever House also. The adult daycare belongs to the St. Francis Health System, and they will be prepared to move that when the sisters leave the convent, because if you don't know, they use part of the convent building for the adult daycare. So when that building is vacated, then they will have to move elsewhere, and they are planning to do that.
So this is another question that I think I will be able to answer. There was a concern about transcripts, student transcripts, and so upon the closure of the school, as an independent school here in Hawaii, all the records and whatnot will be stored at the Hawaii Association of Independent Schools, HAIS, here in Honolulu, I believe, for 30 or 40 years.
All through the years, why haven't we spoken to the alumni and the kids at school now, raised the tuition, like from 13 to 15 or whatever, through that period of time? It could have been viable or not.
The question was, why wasn't the tuition raised over the years to solve the financial problem and make the hospital financially stable? I'm sorry, school. Thanks for being awake. Actually, I said that because I ran a hospital that closed. So I know what you're going through and how difficult this is. I think the best answer I can give to that, I was not involved with the school at that time, but one of the values of St. Francis that the school tried to promote, support, and live was caring for those less fortunate. And I think people, it wasn't a good business model for a school, and there wasn't support, there weren't programs set up to support the operations of the school that brought in enough money to support those who could not afford the tuition. But the generosity of those who were running the school, wanting the students to come, didn't have a good business sense and do that. It's not a good answer, but it's an honest answer.
So I want to comment on that answer. I mean, for the way I'm thinking about it is that, and you were honest about it, but I think that at some point when you're giving, when whomever, you're giving charity, at some point you have to pay your bill. I mean, if, half of us can pay our bills and a quarter is, and I mean, they just can't afford to keep doing this.
And this, the question is, that's not good when you keep doing that and you don't solve those problems. And in truth, that's why we're here today. It was not a good thing.
Basically, I'd just like to know, how long has it been since we've been in arrears or barely making it?
Do you want to answer
I
that?
didn't hear the question.
How long has it been since we've been in arrears financially?
I guess the
The
question was
question.
how long have they been in arrears financially? It's hard to say. I think it's been about, it's hard to say because the sisters loaned the money to the school when there were financial needs. So I would say the last few years has been an issue, and I think it all just started to kind of accumulate and snowball and really hit this last year and a half.
I hate to keep asking the same question, but I mean, since there's no other question, but
I know they were put, you're put in a spot, but can we hear too from the board?
Randall? And while he's walking up to take the spotlight, I have to say, the board has been extraordinary in the effort and attention they put to trying to solve this.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Randall Yee, and I'm chairman of the Board of Directors for St. Francis School. And exactly as Sister Barbara Jean has said, we on behalf of the board, and I would like to introduce those members who I see that are here. There's Sasha Diamond, Darlene Lee, Richard Haru, Patricia Hamamoto, and Thomas Haya. And since we made the announcement, and quite honestly, well before we made the January announcement, understand that when we determined that there were concerns regarding the financial stability of the school, we had worked very diligently in terms of believing that we could turn the school around. And we worked hard all of last year into this year trying to make that happen. There were many questions about why we didn't say anything sooner, and that's a challenge because, again, once you start saying things, then there starts to be a concern that could have been worse, and we chose to focus on what we could. Again, when it became apparent, as it is today, that we were not going to be open, one of the things we did not want to do was to start taking next year's money to start helping this year, which was done in the past. And again, that's not a bad thing. A number of schools do that on a regular basis. It may not be, again, the business practice, but it's also a very common practice. And so at that point in time, we made the announcement. Again, as we mentioned before, we looked at various ways to maintain the school, whether it was to keep the upper school or the lower school, and we made the decision that we did. Since that time of the announcement in January, the board worked many, many hours, multiple times during the reaching out to look at sources of revenue that could continue to operate the school.
Beauty, how darling they are.
Due to the amounts that we needed and the time frame, it also again became apparent that we owe a responsibility to each of you to treat you as fairly as we could and provide you as much time that we could in trying to balance continuing the school but being fair to our parents and students and faculty and staff. So I'm very sorry. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions that were not otherwise asked. Yes, sir. The question is, why wasn't this started 2 years ago? So again, when it comes to that, the projections that we were looking at, we felt were sufficient. We recognized that there are certain things that need to be modified. We expected to have more time, but due to circumstances related to enrollment, collection, expenses that occurred, it unfortunately did not meet our budgetary projections. Occurred, so then what, 2012, 2013? So that was the last time that there had been an official audit. And of course, at that time, that was tied in conjunction with this gym and the granting of funds. So at that point in time, the school was fine. Yeah. Since then, have we had financial statements? Yes, we had, but they were not audited financial statements. They were reviewed, which meant that an accountant had looked at records of the school and provided a report. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
What corporate donors, if at all, were approached for possible funding? TCG helped build this gym, it's such a shame now there's no school. And was TCG ever approached? They just gave $4 million to Straub Clinic.
So the question is, what corporate donors were approached with respect to saving the school? We had not approached any corporate donors directly. We did receive various inquiries. We spoke to various organizations that we thought might potentially help the school. Again, unfortunately, it's a bit of a challenge in that we needed to, before we could reach out to anyone, we had to provide a solid plan, obviously, of continuation. It's pretty obvious to say that there are few organizations or individuals that are going to be willing to put a significant money into the school without being assured of its continuance. Unfortunately, I think that on behalf of the board, there were some very potential positive possibilities that may have done it, but the reality is we did not have sufficient time in order to be able to meet those potential. I guess we just didn't have enough time. Yes?
Sorry, back to the endowments. The forms that we submitted indicated that we could redirect. So Sister Barbara-Jean couldn't answer that question just yet. But where would we go next to find out?
Sure. So again, with respect to the endowment, that's one of the things the board has been looking at. And so we will reach out to those donors that we can and then speak individually with them to discuss what would happen with that endowment. So, yeah, it's not going to just disappear, for sure. So we do appreciate anyone who has an endowment to contact us to let us know so that, yes, we know the current contact information for each of these donors.
Thank you. One other question. If the school closes at the end of this year, what happens to the rest of the buildings until the nuns are moved out to St. Francis and Lehigh?
So again, once the school closes, I mean, it's all going to be decided upon by the sisters as they move forward. Down this side. Oh, thank you.
Why not use the endowment to keep the high school going?
again, the question is, why not use the endowment to keep the high school going? The reality is the endowment's not large enough to keep the high school going, or any part of the school going. Sorry?
Cutie.
So the question is can we just eliminate the elementary school and the middle school and just continue with the high school as previously? Again, it is a question of finances. There's not sufficient funds in the endowment to even continue any part of the school this time. I understand that the alumni has indicated a desire, but unfortunately, again, the time that and the amount that we would have needed to ask for was not realistic. And again, being fair to all of our current students and staff, it was not a realistic expectation. So the comment is because we waited so late, and hindsight, yes, you're right. And there's not a single person on the board or with the sisters that would have liked to have done earlier, but again, circumstances didn't dictate that. I'm sorry to say. Yes?
How will you help the teachers to change to a better job?
So then the question is, how are we going to help the teachers find a better job? And again, with the assistance of our head of school, Casey, and certainly on the board, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that all of our teachers find the best opportunity they can. And we're going to be working from this point on to make sure that our teachers, our staff, and everyone in the school hopefully finds a place that they'll be happy with. Thank you.
You want me to take it? I'll take it. You know, I really appreciate that question. That's a sign of a good student. She cares about other people. That is wonderful.
Just getting back to the endowments that she was talking about, you said that wasn't a realistic number. What is a realistic number to keep the school going? And why are fundraisers such as Nine Violin, why was that canceled? I understand that goes to scholarships, so that money could be used to run the school. That's one of the biggest money makers that we have.
So again, the question is how much money was it going to take to continue to operate the school? And based on what our current projections were, it was going to be in the neighborhood of $4 to $5 million. And so Ninth Island was starting to become a very successful event. We've held it for 3 years, I think, 2 to 3 years. Last year, which was our most successful, we raised approximately $40,000. Yeah, and our concern, of course, was with respect to continuing fundraising, not given the amount of time to put in and given the status of where we were, how successful it was going to be. I mean, again, understandably, it's challenging to raise funds but so when we do say that we felt the amounts were significant, and that's probably a high amount, but still, it was not going to be that far off from what we would need to
One question is,
and
could the land have been sold to save the school? Someone wrote in.
Okay.
Wealthy individuals
Right.
to contribute that much money within a couple of months.
How long, if they would have raised the money, how long would the school last?
A year.
They got the $4 to $5 million.
That would have bought us another year.
That's it.
Yes.
We have some questions. We have some questions from
Yeah, we've got a number of questions. One question here that Sisters appropriate view is, could the land have been sold in order to save the school?
The answer to that is no, because the land belongs to the sisters, and the land will be used to fund the care of the sisters in the future. You know, the other side of this, folks, from the school, which we have sponsored since 1924, is that our religious community has 345 sisters who are aging, and we have been selling all of our properties in order to get enough money to care for our sisters as they age. The decision that leadership made several years ago was never to sell the property here if it would jeopardize the school.
Sorry, so what are plans to do with the property and the building? Are you going to lease it, sell it, or just let it sit and go to ruins?
The question, so what's going to happen to the land and property? Are you going to sell it or let it go to ruin? Honestly put, and a good question. We don't know at this point. This decision was only finalized on Tuesday. We wanted to take great care to announce it in a way that everybody would hear and be able to give feedback and ask questions so that the decision is understood, and that's what we've tried to do. But that's a next step. We have lots of next steps. And that is what happens to the buildings when the school closes. How do we protect them? What will happen? We don't know. Question mark. Yes.
Sorry, I've never been involved in the closing of any kind of organization. The Alumni Association is here. There are other people here who are also parts of other organizations and associations within the school. So what happens to all of those bodies?
What happens to those associated with the school when it closes? And I don't know if I can answer that question. I can tell you that there are plans that will happen to celebrate the life of the school, and all of those associations and groups will be part of that celebration that Dr. Asado is planning. I don't know what will happen after.
I don't think that the Alumni Association has to stop. I mean, you're still going to be alumni, and there'll still be more alumni joining you. And I don't know how you're set up, whether you're a separate incorporated 501c3 or anything like that, but it doesn't mean you can't still keep working or meeting and celebrating each other. But that's a great question. We'll take a look at that for you. Thank you. Down here, sister.
As I understand it, your statement was $4 to $5 million to redeem the school. But are you talking about kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade? If so, why not just eliminate the elementary school or the intermediate school, but keep the high school going? For the high school was the originators of St. Francis. So, as an alumni, class of 61, I would like to see my high school still be here for years to come. Can we not fundraise or minimize that financial standings that we have to raise less money?
Go.
Again, even if we were to do that, I mean, that was part of what the board had looked at, retaining the high school, and again, even if it's not 4 million, if it's 3 million, again, the amounts are significant enough, and within the short period of time that we were looking at, that it was not a reasonable expectation to do that, and that would be only get us 1 more year. I mean, yes, it would have bought us time to do that, but that would have been a lot to ask. So,
Don't you folks have a list of donors?
question is, don't we have a list of donors? And yes, and we did reach out to those donors on that list in December, and there was not a lot of response to that list, to be honest with you. Okay, so the board is, again, just to repeat, the board did everything that it possibly could to continue. We wish we had more time to continue. The board did not want to give up as far as keeping the school open, but we ran out of time. Are there any other questions? Yes? So the question is, are we still going to continue to rent out the gym and the pool? Right? So that again, once the school closes, then that will fall under the decision making of the sisters. That would not be us. So the question is, if the sisters are going to move, can't we rent the convent out, Jeff? So again, a couple things. One is understand that not all of the buildings belong to the school, so it's not, again, within our purview. That's what we're dealing with. The convent is controlled and operated by the sisters, and two, it's not enough money, and don't have enough time to have done it. So again, just so you know, that was part of what the board had looked at. Yes?
So I asked this question to Dr. Salto in an interview probably a month ago. As a current student athlete at St. Francis, a lot of us want to know what's going to happen to like the uniforms and all the school assets.
Casey, I have you answer that. So, again, the question is what's going to happen to all the uniforms and the athletic assets and everything?
Thanks, JJ. So at that time, we were just shutting down 7 through 12, and so we still had the pre-K through 6. And I think you had asked also about like the banner and the version adorning here, all the successes of St. Francis School. And at the time, we're still open, so yeah. Now that this has been announced, that's a great question, and that's something that I would like to sit down with the students themselves to find out, what, and alumni as well, and say, how would you like to move forward with this? This is your school. Yeah. There's a related question that I got online as well. It's a question more directed to me, so I can try to answer that. A student wrote in asking about all the fundraising, for clubs and sports teams and whatnot. What happens to that money? Well, you still have that money. So if you're whatever club it is or whatever athletic team it is, that money is still in your account. You can use it as your team wishes or your club wishes, whether it be prom or whatnot, whatever student government activity. So what JJ had asked is a meeting time to set up with me and other alumni and whatnot to make that happen. Absolutely. Yeah, let's make that happen. We've got a few months left in school. Let's try to think of some creative ways, in meaningful ways, where we can preserve that in some place or somewhere. I'm all ears. I'd love to hear your responses. Yeah. Thank you. That's just Barbara G.
Thank you. This has been a most helpful discussion because there are many questions that we have been asking. You have raised some we can add to our list so that the next several months we can do what we can to make the celebration of the school happen and then future planning. So I really thank all of you for coming, for your attention, for your willingness to listen, and I hope that in the difficulty of the decision, You will understand why it had to be made, first of all, and second of all, that you will always love and respect what has been in these buildings for all these years. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Sister Barbara Jean.